Okay, then all about your allergens. Right, I'm not here to give you your allergen training. You've got to do that separately, but I can advise you on how it affects us as cake makers and give you some really industry specific advice. I'm not going to be talking about labelling this training, that's going to come next because it's such a big topic and that's going to be completely separate. So, all food workers, even temporary ones, need to have allergen training. We need to do a full allergen risk assessment to be sure we're not contaminating anything at any stage of the process. And we need to produce an allergy matrix. Now that sounds a bit scary, but it's literally just a list of all of our recipes, all the products that we use. Like it can say chocolate cake, vanilla buttercream, our brand of sugar paste, Nutella. Next to each product, we have a tick boxes of what allergens are in there. So once we produce a cake, using each of those things, we know which tick boxes to transfer across onto the packaging. So it's not allergen matrix, it's not as bad as it sounds. The FSA training is free and it is the most detailed training. I did three other allergy trainings to research this. The FSA one, yeah, it's a lot harder, but it needs to be because this is life or death. You know, you can literally kill people with a cake if you've labelled it as gluten-free when it's not. You've got to recognise how important this is. The FSA one has also got a lot of links to things like Celiac UK and the anaphylaxis campaign that if you're interested in that stuff, it can be really valuable to you. It's also got a lot more detail about labelling. But they do have a separate labelling training as well. If you did do the FSA training before September 2020, you need to redo it because it's been updated since then. Right, so as cake makers, please be aware our sprinkles and our food colourings often contain allergens that we might forget about. So make sure you know what's in there. Other things that we might come across, different brands of chocolate, some contain soya, some don't. If you change brand, you need to update that recipe matrix and make a note in your diary as well. And I would check upcoming orders if you are offering soya free. You need to be aware of that. Oats, right? Oats, as they grow, they are gluten free. However, they are milled in the same machinery as gluten containing cereals. So if you need gluten-free oats, buy them from the free from section. Make sure they are labelled as gluten-free. Some of our spices like cinnamon and things, they can contain mustard. Again, it's used in the factory. Seeds can contain sesame or traces of other nuts because they're all handled together. Treacle contains sulfur dioxide. Also some dried fruits do as well, so be aware of that. Coconut is not a nut and does not need to be labelled. It's not actually technically a nut. So for our due diligence, we need to keep on checking our brands to make sure that the recipes have not changed. It would be unusual for them to introduce an allergen that wasn't previously there, but it can happen. It has been known to happen. So things like your baking spreads, your chocolate bars, just keep an eye on them. So when do we have the conversation with our clients? Right, basically before any money has changed hands, before the order's actually placed, it should come up in the first few messages. They should ask you, but not everyone realises that home cake makers don't have to cater for allergens. You don't want to get a message 3 days before delivery saying, oh yeah, can it be egg free? You don't want that situation. It don't have to be a big scary conversation. You can literally just have a copy and paste message just saying, just so you know, this order will contain gluten and egg and milk and what have you. Sometimes you might get asked about an allergen that's not one of the 14. Treat that inquiry exactly the same. If you can do it safely, if you're confident in that, then by all means do it. If not, say no. You don't have to. Always keep a note, even if it's just a tick box in your diary to say that you have had the allergy conversation before the order was placed. It's just to keep yourself covered, it's your due diligence. And if you do notice that you haven't ticked that box, then you recognise that you haven't had the conversation yet. Right, we do not have to cater for allergies. Don't get worried if people start talking about discrimination. The reality is we are working from our home kitchens, from busy family kitchens. There is a very good chance that most of the 14 allergens are handled in those kitchens. So in most cases it's not safe. We can't guarantee anything as absolutely free of an allergen unless we are a gluten-free home, as an example. So don't be scared to say no to people. But even if we're not catering for allergens, we still must be careful of cross-contamination because we do have to tick those boxes on the labelling. So an example is when you're buttercreaming a cake, if you're scraping it off in the bowl, you're getting cake crumbs in your buttercream, you're then introducing egg and gluten where it's not meant to be. So that buttercream can't then be used for, not going off behind me, that buttercream can't then be used for anything that's not labelled as gluten and egg, if you know what I mean. We can't use a may contain label as a substitute for dodgy hygiene. Right. A word to the wise regarding vegan. Vegan labelling is not actually as strict as we would like it to be. If something is labelled as vegan, it may still contain dairy, it may still contain fish because it can be produced in the same factory as those ingredients. So please don't assume that something is dairy free just because it's vegan. If you do cater for allergies, you must put your training to use. It's all in there, your storage, your different utensils and work areas. You've got to be careful of family members moving stuff around in cupboards. Again, if you do cater for allergens, think about your stacked cakes. You can't have a gluten-free cake with a non-gluten containing cake. If you have an allergen complaint, you've got to report it to the UEHO yourself, and you need to fully investigate your end whether or not you feel the complaint is justified. It absolutely sucks, but that's what you've got to do. So I'll add the link to the FSA training in the caption for here. I hope this has been helpful, but do ask any questions because I'm aware I got distracted at one point by someone going off behind me.